When I got back from Wakanda, I felt stuck. To bring my ideas to life, I need cash.
Well, here we
Claire Obscure Expedition 33's story is all about grief. How much it hurts when we lose someone we love, how it can turn families against each other, these self-destructive choices it drives us to make. But the story also presents a what-if scenario. What if we never had to lose those people? What if they never died? What if they just kept on living and living and living forever? That is where the character of Verso comes in. After the real Verso died, his mother painted a living replica of him within the world of the canvas and granted him immortality. This version of her son would never age, never be physically harmed, and most importantly, never die. And what is the result? Well, this version of Verso is portrayed to be miserable. He is deeply depressed. If you choose Mael's ending, his final words are heartbreaking.
We should give these humans good reason to hate and fear us after all.
Only you can do this. You can do this, please. Unpaint me. Unpaint me.
Judge, jury, execution!
This is real firepower!
I don't want this life. I don't want this life. I don't want this life.
I just wanted to live this lifetime together.
Newton's greatest
This
gift.
lifetime that was
need to
stolen.
stop that vehicle in its tracks.
Please. Please.
I don't want this life.
Immortality was not a blessing, it was a curse. He may be immune to physical damage, but he carries emotional and spiritual wounds that have never healed. Every hurt, every betrayal, every broken relationship, those scars run deeper. As we will discuss later, this version of Verso has been forced to kill people who he truly cared about. He has been forced to watch expedition after expedition end in death and failure. He has watched his own family fall apart. He has witnessed decades of misery and tragedy, and for him, it never ends. And yet, in spite of all of that, I think Verso may have been able to endure if there was some point in it all. But instead, he is trapped in a meaningless life, one where he only exists as a balm to his mother's suffering. And eventually, he comes to realize that his very existence is poisonous to her, because as long as he keeps living, she will keep choosing fantasy over reality. She is slowly dying here, and it is his fault. Not for any choice or mistake he made, but because of what he is, the nature of his existence. And so in that scene we just watched, where he keeps repeating, "I don't want this life," I do not think he is just referring to all the pain and tragedy he has experienced. He is also saying that he does not want to be this emotional black hole that prevents them from ever escaping from their grief. He does not want to be their addiction anymore. After finally forcing his mother out of the canvas, he does keep fighting alongside Mael, at least for a time. And I think he does that because, at first, she frames her fight as being not for herself, but for the sake of the people of the canvas, for Lune and Ciel. And I think Verso genuinely does care for Lune and Ciel and the other residents of Lumiere. I think he does want them to get their happy ending. For a little while, he may have thought that it was possible, that they could find some perfect middle ground. Save the people of the canvas while keeping it hidden from Aline. Let them live, but still cut her off from the source of her addiction. But then we reach the final confrontation, and all of a sudden, Mael's language changes. She reveals her true motivation.
Justify. You wanted me. You joined me. I tried. But I couldn't. Verso died because of me. How do we get from that to joy?
Child, it will get better, I promise you. But this is not the way.
Verso hears this and he realizes, oh no, His sister is falling into the exact same trap that his mother did. Once again, he is being used as a crutch by someone who refuses to confront reality. And then Renoir opens this portal, Verso sees his mother gasping for breath, stumbling on the ground, weak and sickly. In this moment, he sees Mael's future, and it is going to be his fault, because the thing she cannot let go of is him. That is why he suddenly chooses to destroy the very same canvas he was just fighting to save 5 minutes ago. And I think his final words to Mael in this ending are very important.
Judge, jury, executioner!
It's gonna be okay. You've got this
He's a mutant.
incredible power to paint. You'll never have to suffer a life you don't want.
To him, being trapped in a life he does not want is the worst fate he can imagine, because that is his fate. He has been trapped in a life that he does not want for 67 years. And I think his final moments with the rest of the party are significant too. Esquier and Minoko say goodbye like old friends. They were always accepting of their fate, because being Verso's companion, doing what is best for him, is baked into their DNA. This is what they were created for. Ciel also accepts her fate with her usual dignity and grace. But Lune's response is different. She does not embrace him, does not forgive him. She sits down on the other side of the portal and glares, because everything she spent her entire life working for, and everything her parents spent their entire lives working for, all of the struggle and the sacrifice and the heartache, she thought she had finally succeeded, and then it was stolen from her at the last possible moment. Of course she is angry, and there has been a lot of question about whether these characters are real or fake, and how that applies to the decision to erase them. But that discussion does not matter here. What matters is that to Verso, from his perspective, they are real. He acknowledges their humanity and the validity of their feelings over and over again. In this journal, he even says that they do deserve to live. The point is that he is willing to sacrifice people he cares about, people who are real to him, even if they're not real to us, to do what he believes is right. It is about how far someone is willing to go to save their family, even if that means the total annihilation of the only world they have ever known. And this is not the first time Verso has been forced to make that kind of cruel choice. So now let's talk about 2 journals in the game that reveal a great deal about the journey his character has been through. The first is titled Julie, and was written by a member of a very early expedition, from back before they were even called expeditions. According to her journal, Verso and his father attempted to persuade her group that the real threat was not the paintress, but the man trapped at the bottom of Monaco. Julie became suspicious after seeing him survive an attack that should have killed him. Believing that he may have been a traitor, she decided to ambush and interrogate him. The next journal, titled Verso, reveals what happened next. I am going to play this journal in its entirety. I know it is super long, so if you want, you can just skip ahead like 2 minutes if you don't want to listen to the whole thing. But I recommend that you do listen, because it is very important to understanding his character. Okay, here it is.
I miss you. I don't have the right to miss you, but I do. I wish I could talk to you. Tell you. I don't know what I would tell you. Just ask that you forgive me. Julie, forgive me. I'm not a traitor. I'm not. I'm trying to save. I'm trying to save us all.
Be wary. No time
But you're right.
exists.
I am a coward. I'm a coward.
Dazzling the diamond.
You deserved to know why, but I couldn't. I couldn't face you properly. Not, and still do, what had to be done. believes you're Clear's creation. And even if you're not, we can no longer trust you. But I think you just wanted answers.
I proudly bear the X.
Why?
Even when it clashes with
Why
my son.
couldn't you just let it go? Why did you convince them to abduct me, interrogate me?
This is hardly the only
No.
child.
I shouldn't say that. You thought I was a traitor. You were doing what you thought was right, just like we are. I swear to you, I'm doing what's right.
4, 3.
I should have known when you started questioning things that you wouldn't be fooled. But how could I even explain? You'd have thought I'd gone mad. Doppelgangers. Countless worlds. But Papa's right. We can't take the risk. Too much is at stake. It had to be done. It had to. Clear already took our sister. If we want to save our family, our world, our people, we can't take any chances.
I was fine.
And once we free her, she'll bring you back. It won't be forever.
Loki gone?
I promise.
Surely he'll be back.
I promise. We deserve to live. All of us. We deserve to exist.
First and foremost, this is an example of the kind of emotional wound that Verso has been carrying for the last 67 years. Julie was someone he cared for deeply. He still misses her even now. But she betrayed him. She ambushed him, trapped him, interrogated him, not out of cruelty, but because she believed she was doing the right thing. However, that does not make the betrayal sting any less. Just as I'm sure knowing that Verso was doing what he believed was right did not make the betrayal any easier to bear for Lune in that scene we discussed before. When he mentions doing what had to be done, he is referring to killing Julie and her entire expedition, people he had fought beside, who he had probably grown close to, but now felt he had no choice but to destroy them. It reveals that Verso has always been a character, willing to make these kinds of hard and even cruel choices. And he has lived through 67 years of this kind of suspicion, betrayal, and tragedy. No wonder why he is so miserable. This journal also reveals that, back then, he was fully committed to saving the canvas. But at some point that changed. He realized that he could not save both his mother and the canvas. He had to choose one or the other. Allow her to slowly die in here so that the people of Lumiere can live, or allow Renoir to erase them all so that she can finally be free. You can see in the scene where Expedition 33 reaches the top of the monolith just how affected he is by the sight of his mother's extreme state of deterioration, the way both her body and mind are literally falling apart right before his eyes. It is a traumatic moment for him. Watching that scene, it is easy to understand why he made the choices that he did. I also suspect that, over time, he decided that both he and his immortal family did not have much of a life worth fighting for anymore. As the years passed, their lives became stagnant and meaningless, constantly oriented towards a past that became more distant with each passing day, a past that was never going to be restored. Time could not be rewound back to 67 years ago. The life they had in the canvas before the fracture was already gone forever, even if the painted version of Renoir refused to accept that. And even if the canvas could be repainted, what would be the point of their lives here? To just keep playing make-believe forever and ever? As crazy as it might sound, maybe by killing them, he is actually saving them from a fate worse than death. And I think there is an element of suicidal ideation in his character too. As he states very clearly in that scene we watched earlier, he wants to die. But since his mother made him immortal, the only way he can die is by forcing her out and allowing Renoir to erase everything, including himself. That is the only way he can ever find peace. Just like everyone else, his motivations are messy and complicated. Finally, I think his experience with Julie's expedition is also meant to explain his behavior around the members of Expedition 33. When he first joins Expedition 33, he is very guarded. He hides his true feelings, his past, and his motivations from them. When Luna and Ciel try to connect with him, he deflects their questions with jokes or charm, because the truth is he is leading them towards their own annihilation. When they destroy the Ancients, they will also destroy themselves, and he knows that. He is lying by omission. He has already decided for himself what is right and what is wrong, and he is very willing to lie and manipulate and obscure the truth to do what he believes is right. There are a couple times when Mael actually gets kind of close to the truth, and then Verso very subtly steers her away. For example, in this scene, when she briefly sees the Curator's true form, sees a glimpse of her father, and then this is how Verso responds.
That was... I saw...
What happened?
I saw... It was... Renoir.
I used to see him in my nightmares too. It can be quite traumatizing.
He redirects her away from the truth with a misleading but plausible explanation. But all of these lies and manipulation are not just about protecting his plan. It is also to protect himself. He does not want to form attachments with these other characters, because he knows they are going to die, that he has to betray them, and he does not want to have to feel that pain. In a roundabout way, he is doing the same thing that Aline is doing. She created him to protect herself from the pain of grief. He is keeping an emotional distance from the Expeditioners for the exact same reason. But that emotional distance does not last for long. He cannot help but grow close to them, to care about them and their struggles, and slowly reveal more and more of his true self. This demonstrates that, deep down inside, Verso is a good-natured, empathetic character who really does care about what happens to those around him. He can try to suppress that part of himself, but given enough time, it will always resurface. You can see it perhaps most clearly in his conversations with Mael. For example, when he tries to help her process her grief following Gustav's death, or when he shows her how to repaint Ciel and Lune, even though he probably does not believe that is the right thing to do. And of course, his inherent empathy only makes his choice to destroy the canvas and all of these people along with it all the more painful. Something I have discussed in other videos is the way a character's creations reflect their personality. Well, the real Verso created most of this canvas, and it is vibrant and colorful and full of silliness and joy, and despite how miserable and depressed this version of Verso may seem, there are a handful of moments when that happy, silly inner child pokes through, the one who Mael describes as constantly laughing at inside jokes with her father, or who had enough of a sense of humor to create something like the Gestrels. For example, when he recruits Minoko.
There will be a lot of fighting, man. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's true. There will be a lot of fighting. Exactly. Can't be in that. Good. 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 Yes, good.
A little help, please.
Or when he cuts himself in half to cheer up the rest of the expedition.
Hi. I'm a pair of legs that can talk.
Keep going.
We're both Verso.
You are so ridiculous.
Verso, aren't you getting too attached?
In these moments, you can catch glimpses of who Verso once was, before that long lifetime of scars. Okay, so in my previous videos, I included full summaries of each character's story, tracking their journey from beginning to end, examined every single one of their appearances to understand them as clearly as possible. However, Verso shows up in nearly every single scene of the game, and he has like 10,000 lines of dialogue. So this video would have to be really long if I want to do that with him too. I mean, Claire only shows up on screen for like a total of 10 minutes. and I squeezed a 40-minute video out of that. Just imagine what I could do with Verso if I was feeling really long-winded and rambling right now. For the sake of brevity, instead of doing that, I am going to focus the rest of this video on just 4 questions. First, why did the writers choose to make Verso the playable character after Gustav's death? Second, what does his choice to stand by and allow Gustav to be killed reveal about Verso's character? Third, what does his choice to throw away Alicia's letter reveal about him? And fourth, what about his relationship with his painted family? What does that tell us about him? Alright, let's start with the first one. Verso becoming the playable character after Gustav's death. And by playable character, I mean the only character you can control while in the camp. Obviously, while roaming the open world, you can play as anybody you want. Mael very much feels like the main character of this story to me, especially after Gustav is gone. She would be the obvious choice for a playable character. So why did the developers put us in control of Verso instead? By doing this, they are essentially telling the story, or at least the camp interactions, from his point of view. And that choice is extra surprising because for most of the game, Verso's true motivations remain hidden from us. We are viewing a large part of the story from the perspective of a character we do not really understand. We do not know what he is fighting for or why, but we are shown long interactions between him and the other party members, where we see him slowly open up, slowly reveal more about himself, witness his capacity for empathy, the depth of his pain, and also his silliness, his lame jokes, and his charm. And I think that is exactly the point. Verso makes such cruel choices over the course of the story, and his character is wrapped up in so much deceit and manipulation, that if the writers wanted to, I think it would have been very easy for them to present this story in such a way that they turn the audience against him completely. Instead, because we are so intimate with him, because we spend so much time with Verso in the camp, we end up empathizing with him. Even if you disagree with his ultimate choices, even if you believe the canvas should have been saved, you will at least totally understand why he is doing what he is doing. So next, let's take a closer look at one of those camp interactions. At one point, Mael asked Verso if he let Gustav die on purpose. And yes, the truth is that he could have saved Gustav. He chose not to because he was worried that Gustav might get in the way of his true plans. This is one of the darkest parts of Verso's story. Gustav's death absolutely devastates Mael, not to mention the other expeditions. It tears her up inside. At one point, while they are crossing this bridge in the Forgotten Battlefield, her grief triggers a full emotional breakdown. All of that could have been prevented if Verso had chosen to step in one moment sooner. I think this choice is meant to demonstrate the capacity for cruelty and hardness within Verso's character, and to make it personal not just for Mael, but for the player too. We grow close to Gustav too. We spend a lot of time with him. Just like Verso, we witness his pain and his suffering and his strength. We root for him to succeed. And then Verso just lets him die. This is meant to complicate our feelings about his character. Even if you do agree with his ultimate choices, Gustav definitely deserved better than this. Moving on, let's examine another one of his morally messy choices. Before the confrontation with the paintress, Alicia gives her brother a letter for Mael, and she leaves it up to him whether to actually deliver that letter. In this letter, Alicia reveals the truth about the nature of the canvas and the paintress. It is not a plea for her life or for the sake of the canvas. In fact, Alicia states very clearly that she is at peace with her death. Instead, this letter is a gesture of honesty in a story filled with deception. It is an attempt to cut through all the lies and the bullshit that has entangled both of their families. In the end, Verso chooses not to deliver this letter. And what are the writers communicating to their audience about his character with that decision? Both Visage and the Mask Keeper represent the real Verso, he who guards the truth with lies. And it portrays the real Verso as someone who hid his true feelings behind a mask. And we see this same trait in his replica. Again and again and again, when given the choice between truth and deceit, he chooses deceit. because the truth is painful for him. He would rather just hide from it, which again, ironically, is exactly the same thing that Aline is doing inside the canvas in the first place, hiding from the truth. In that previous interaction we discussed before, the one where Mael asks him if he let Gustav die on purpose, the developers give the player the choice of whether or not to have him reveal the truth. And that feels wrong to me. We should not have been given that choice. Verso very much seems to me to be a character who should lie in that moment, to guard them both from the pain of the truth, because that is who he is. It is an unusual trait for a video game protagonist. Most heroes fight on the side of truth. Sometimes they even die for the truth, but not Verso. Though I think you could argue that he fights for a deeper truth. His Axon's title is He Who Guards the Truth with Lies. Truth is something he is trying to protect, not destroy. He does not enjoy telling lies. He does it because he believes he has to. But really, usually he prefers to not say anything at all. There are so many moments in the camp interactions where instead of speaking his mind, he just sort of grunts. For example, right here in this interaction with Esquier.
They are best friends. It's been a few centuries of shared living. Just like you would never leave me.
And there are a lot of other scenes where something really dramatic is happening on screen, and all of the other characters are reacting and asking questions, and then the camera will cut over to Verso and he just remains totally silent. He tends to keep his thoughts and emotions bottled up inside. You have to watch his facial expressions and his body language to know what he is really feeling. It is interesting to compare his behavior to that of Renoir. When he regains his human form, Renoir is extremely open about his feelings. He explains exactly what he is doing and why he is doing it. He delivers whole entire monologues on the subject. By contrast, even in his final scene, Verso only speaks a handful of short lines. He does not pontificate, he does not deliver a whole monologue explaining his motivations. I don't know if I actually have a point here, it is just an interesting difference. Renoir and Verso are both trying to accomplish the exact same thing, but they go about it in very different ways. Moving on to our fourth and final question, let's talk about Verso's relationship with his tainted family. His relationship with his father is made very clear. They once fought side by side to save Aline from her imprisonment at the top of the monolith, and thus save their world and everyone in it. At some point, their paths diverged. Verso came to believe that the only way to truly save his mother was to force her out of the canvas, even if that meant not only his own destruction, but the annihilation of his entire world. His father did not agree. He still wants to restore the life they had together before the fracture. They have been enemies ever since. They do not hate each other, there is still affection between them, but they cannot be reconciled. They are both fully committed to their opposing paths. His relationship with his sister is a little more opaque. He definitely does care for her, as we see in this scene when he says, but his father is also correct when he says,
You embrace her, yet you're condemning her to die.
However much Verso may genuinely care for his sister, his choices are sentencing her to death. Unfortunately, the story never really gives him a chance to fully explain himself, and so we are left to speculate. Does he believe that his mother's life is fundamentally more valuable than his sister's because his mother is real and his sister is artificial? Or does he believe that, just like himself, his sister has already lived too long, and it has not been a happy life for her either? She has lived scarred and isolated and virtually alone. for 67 years now. I mentioned earlier in the essay that he could view himself as saving them from a worse fate than death by killing them, though that is just a theory since he never says so himself. Alicia does state in her letter and later to Mael in person that she has made peace with death. Maybe Verso already knows that. But then again, there's the scene at the manor in Old Lumiere, where Alicia is shown embracing her mother. How are we meant to interpret this? Is this meant to signal that she is embracing her life in the canvas? That she wants to keep living here? After all, in that very same letter, she also suggests that Mael may find some way to save the canvas, so her feelings seem to be conflicted. Either way, when Mael does grant her wish to die, something that would have happened anyway if Verso's plan had succeeded, he is devastated. He is angry at her. The reality of her death hits him much harder than just the idea of it. In this moment, he falls into the same grief trap as the other characters. He cannot bear to let go of someone he loves. He can recognize this destructive impulse in others, such as Aline and Mael when they refuse to let him go, but when it happens to him, he struggles just the same. And I think we are shown something similar in the scene with Painted Clea, when she chooses death rather than to continue being a mindless broken cog in this giant Nevron manufacturing plant. He does not want to let her go either. I do not think this reveals anything new about Verso, so much as it reinforces the story's central theme, that grief is universally corrosive. It affects everyone the same way. No one, not even someone as self-aware as Verso, can escape it. Just like the last time with Clea, I have to end this video by saying that Verso is a difficult character to summarize. On the one hand, he is deeply empathetic, caring, and thoughtful. Despite his best efforts to maintain an emotional distance, he still ends up forming meaningful relationships with the members of Expedition 33, the same people he is ultimately leading to their deaths. He loves his family and fights hard to save them, even if he has to hurt them to do that. But on the other hand, he is a character who constantly hides his true feelings behind a mask. There is a darkness within him. He is willing to do anything, including deceit, manipulation, and even murder, to do what he believes is right. He is a character who seems to believe that the ends always justify the means. He is miserable and depressed. He is trapped in a life he does not want. His very existence is toxic to the people he cares about, through no fault of his own. Something I really like about Claire Obscure's story is that it does not reduce any of these characters into generic heroes or villains. They are all messy and complicated, which makes them feel more human. Both Renoir and Verso are trying to do the right thing, trying to save someone they love. But the methods they choose and the consequences of those choices, the deaths of innocent people like Gustave and Ciel and Lune, complicates their story. No character is allowed to do the right thing without first getting blood on their hands. And next time I am going to examine another complicated, messy character with a lot of blood on his hands. I am going to examine Renoir again, except a different Renoir this time. So, see you then.
Maximum pulse!
Feel the wrath of the goddess!
I have already done a video on a character named Renoir from Claire Obscure Expedition 33 who looks a lot like this one. And if you have already played and completed the game, you will know why that makes sense. And if you have not already played the game, what are you doing here? What interests me about these two characters is that they have identical motivations. They both want to save their family, but that shared motive drives them to pursue exactly opposite goals. One wants to erase the canvas while the other fights to preserve it. And neither Renoir is successful in the end, at least not on their own. The fate of the canvas is ultimately not determined by either of them, but instead by their children, by Mael and Verso. Of course, parent and child relationships are another important theme of the story, particularly the ways parents attempt to assert control over their children, not for malevolent or villainous reasons, but out of love to keep them safe. Meanwhile, the children tend to resist and rebel against that parental control to follow their own path. Before digging deeper into that, I want to discuss what I believe is the key difference between the two Renoirs. It is not that one is real and the other is fake, or that one is right and the other is wrong, or that one is a hero and the other is a villain. I do not think it would be accurate to label either of them as villains. A deconstruction of villainy is just the name of this video series, where I analyze video game antagonists. Apparently, I need to find some other title for more nuanced characters like Renoir and Clea, so viewers don't mistake this analysis for moral condemnation. Anyway, the real difference is that this Renoir, Mael's father, is fighting for the future, for change. His family has been trapped in a cycle of grief since the death of his son, and he wants them to move on. You can see this most clearly in the Reacher axon, she who reaches for the stars, which represents Mael, not as who she is now, but who she could become, if she manages to leave her grief behind and embrace the future. On the other hand, this Renoir, Verso's father, is fighting on the side of stasis, for his immortal family to just keep living and living in exactly the same place, in exactly the same way forever. This is something I have discussed in other videos. Characters who fight against change almost always fail. For example, Gwyn from the Dark Souls trilogy. He wanted to keep his Age of Fire going forever and ever and prevent the world from moving on to its next natural state. And he failed spectacularly to break his entire world. The reason why these characters tend to fail is because it speaks to a basic truth that we must all come to accept. Change is inevitable. We either learn to adapt or else get left behind, which is exactly what happens to this version of Renoir. His inability to accept change leads to his annihilation. The same fate awaits both Aline and Mael, who are also choosing stasis. Aline is also refusing to move on, and her mind and body are literally falling apart as a result. If you side with Mael in the ending, you will see that her body is already beginning to undergo the same process. But let's get back to Renoir. I want to show you 3 examples where these 2 different versions of Renoir mirror each other. In each case, they say nearly identical lines, and each case reveals something about both of their characters. Okay, here's the first. This scene takes place in the camp, after the survivors of Expedition 33 have reunited with Ciel, and they're hanging out and having a good time, and then suddenly something changes. Time freezes, and Painted Alicia appears for the first time. As she reaches out towards Mael, she is interrupted by her father. And we are going to watch what happens next together. As you watch, pay close attention to his dialogue. Okay, here it is.
I got you covered. Keep going.
It's not good for you to see.
As graceful and lethal as always, T'Challa.
Alright, next we are going to watch the scene where Mael reunites with her father. This is after the defeat of the Paintress and after the reveal of her true identity. Here it is.
Maximum pulse!
The area's almost
I thought I told you to stay up.
Luckily, my body is at home.
Both versions of Renoir say almost the exact same line. I told you to stay home. To be fair, there are some tonal differences. Mael's father feels slightly more affectionate, a bit lighter in his delivery, but the message is the same. I told you to do something, not because I'm being a jerk, but for your own good, to protect you. And you did not listen to me. You did not obey me. You chose to put yourself in danger instead. Both versions of Renoir have this need for control. In my previous video, when I described his character this way, I got a lot of pushback in the comments, which surprised me. After all, it is a word the writers themselves use in relation to his character multiple times in the game. It seems like people hear the word controlling and think it has to always mean something really terrible and negative, like describing Renoir as controlling is equivalent to condemning him as an evil villain who must be stopped. However, in the context of parenting, it is not necessarily a negative. I mean, we want parents to exercise some control over their children, right? Especially over young children. You should not let a toddler do whatever they want. They will kill themselves. Killing themselves is actually what toddlers do best. Spend 5 minutes with a 3-year-old and you will be stunned by their utter lack of survival instincts. The problem that both versions of Renoir are running into is that, eventually, kids grow up. They begin resisting that control and making their own mistakes, and a parent's ability to intervene shrinks more and more. Another game I have written about extensively on this channel explores this exact same theme. In God of War Ragnarok, Kratos' son Atreus is growing up, and that is a problem. Kratos tries to keep his son on a metaphorical leash, not because he is an asshole, but because he loves his son and wants him to be safe. But Kratos totally fails. Atreus just keeps doing whatever the hell he wants. He makes reckless and dangerous choices, and every attempt to control him just pushes him further away. In the end, Kratos has to let go, not because he wants to, but because he has to. He chooses to trust his son, and allows him to depart on a journey that will take him far away from the safety of home. That is basically the same choice that Renoir makes at the end of this story. Despite all of his paternal instincts shouting at him to hold on as tight as possible to save his daughter, in the end, he has to let go, to trust her. There is nothing else he can do. I am not calling either of them villains when I describe them as having controlling characteristics. That is just what good fathers do, until they can't anymore. But let's rewind back to those two scenes we watched earlier. There is a notable difference between these two situations. Maëlle is 16, that puts her right on the threshold of adulthood. She is not mature enough to be allowed to make all of her own decisions. I mean, she is literally killing herself here. But she is also already too old to fully control. When she says no, her father can try to beg, to plead, to persuade, to show her the right path, and even to use physical force to make her take the right path. But it all fails. She wins this battle. This is the core tension of their relationship. A father who wants what is best for his daughter, and a child who has already grown out of his reach. On the other hand, Alicia, despite her appearance, is not 16. She is like 80 years old. She is more than mature enough to make her own decisions, and yet her father is still treating her as a child, which I think speaks to this version of Renoir's inability to accept change. His daughter is already definitely grown up. Alicia is an adult, full stop. Unlike Maëlle, there is no gray area here. But her father refuses to acknowledge it. Okay, let's watch two more scenes where the two different versions of Renoir mirror each other. This one takes place during the final confrontation between Verso and his father inside the monolith.
If saving means losing, then so be it.
Alright, next we are going to watch part of the confrontation between Maëlle and her father at the end of the game. Here it is.
You can hate me, but that's a choice, honestly. As your father, I must look out for you, especially not come like yourself.
Both versions of Renoir deliver some form of the line, I am going to save you whether you like it or not. Maëlle's relationship with her father is an exact mirror to Verso's relationship with his. Both fathers want to save their children from themselves. Maëlle wants to remain inside the canvas, which will kill her eventually. and Verso wants to erase the canvas, which is essentially a form of suicide. He will be erased along with it. Neither Renoir can just sit back and watch their child destroy themselves. They have to try to intervene, even if, as we have already discussed at length, that is not actually possible anymore. What really complicates matters is that both children have these conflicting virtuous and selfish motivations. Maya wants to save the people of the canvas, which is great, but also she wants to hide in a fantasy world that makes her feel better, which is not so great. Verso wants to save his mother, which is a lovely motivation to have, but also he is miserable and depressed and wants to die, which is a not so lovely motivation. Every character here is written to be nuanced enough that the audience will be able to find reasons to both support and oppose them. It is really good writing. Both versions of Renoir believe that their children's well-being justifies the cost of their actions. They are willing to kill the expeditioners and the citizens of Lumiere if it means saving their own family. It is the exact same kind of choice that Joel makes at the end of The Last of Us. Joel and Renoir are very similar characters in what kinds of things they are willing to do in the name of safeguarding their child's life. The big difference between the two different versions of Renoir is what they are actually sacrificing. Mael's father sacrifices the lives of the people of the canvas, who might not actually be real, depending on how you define real. Verso's father is willing to sacrifice his wife, and she is definitely real. There is no gray area there. Aline is going to die if she remains inside the canvas. She has already reached a state of extreme deterioration, and yet this version of Renoir never once acknowledges this. He keeps saying that he wants to save his family, but pretty soon, in her case, there is not going to be anything left to save. He seems to be trapped in denial, unable to see what is right in front of him. I cannot help but imagine some alternate universe where the two Renoirs chose to work together to save both of their families. There is a middle path here, if they were just willing to sit down and talk to each other. It does not have to be one or the other. I think both versions of Renoir have this flaw where they choose force over diplomacy, which means they are incapable of resolving their differences. But let's move on. Let's examine one final set of mirrored scenes. First, we are going to watch two cutscenes involving Verso's father. The first comes after the death of Gustave, and the second is from that same confrontation in Old Lumiere that we watched part of before. As you watch these two cutscenes, pay close attention to how Renoir frames his motivations. What kind of language does he use? And what does Verso accuse him of? Okay, here it is.
This won't make sense to you now. But we both want what's best for our families. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle.
Judge! Jury! Executioner!
You've lived more than a lifetime. It's time to let her go. A lifetime. A lifetime with my family torn apart.
Where there's one arc, there are probably more.
No.
Tremble before master!
My family back.
Together to victory! The moon haunts you!
You don't get to lecture me on family. Why do you refuse to see I am doing this for us? Yet you insist on rushing toward death.
Immortality has its...
You're trying to stop the wrong cycle.
Or else.
You're doing this for yourself.
An Ankh, destroy it.
Of course. It's easier for you to think that.
This is real
Easier to betray us if I believe.
Alright, next we are going to watch another cutscene involving Mael's father. This also comes from the final confrontation. Here it is.
Another day with living corpses. Since the fire, our family has crumbled. Aline in the canvas. Clea fighting a solitary war. You, a living ghost.